So tell me more about ChatGPT. How are you? I see you too. I like when I'm like looking and like competitive, like you pop up, which I love, How did you be so successful at ChatGPT?
Back in October, I just noticed all of a sudden I was getting all these calls that were direct, and every time I was asking, "How'd you find me?" It was ChatGPT.
Absolutely. It's not theoretical. It's like I'm in the trenches. This is what's working. So
Right.
let's shift away from the light times. Let's talk about a dark time. What would you say is your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
Whew. But I actually consider one of my biggest failures is staying comfortable for so long and not looking outside of our team for growth.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Iconic Agent Living Podcast with Jen Marie. Today, I am so excited to welcome Darren Tackett here in Scottsdale, Arizona. He has been one of the top luxury agents for 29 years. He has grown in the last 3 years from 7 agent to 30 agents, consistently placing number 1 and 2 in Arizona. So that's so exciting. And in addition, he has 4 kids, ages 5 to 26. He's a golfer, he's a fitness addict, and he is an amazing friend. So welcome, Darren.
Thank you. It's quite an intro.
Yeah. So take us back to where it all started. You were born, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up on the west side of town here, which is commonly known as Glendale, Peoria area, so a little lower socioeconomic status than Scottsdale. And single mom, only child, and I grew up mostly in a manufactured home. My mom was a secretary, and she did a great job. I never realized I was poor until I got older. But it's one of the things that I feel like always drove me. I mean, she was great about always pushing me towards college, which I was on the 7-year plan, so I did finally get through. And I went from business to figuring out I didn't want to do that, and I finally settled on wanting to go into physical therapy because I was very into fitness, and I thought, okay, sports medicine, that's going to be my gig. And so I got out of U of A. I came back up here to the Phoenix area. I worked for a company called NovaCare for a year, and unfortunately that was enough to open my eyes to say, wow, I don't want to commit another 2 or 3 years of school and student loans to doing this. And so a friend of mine who was in pharmaceutical sales, she said, hey, you're really motivated. You should just get into sales, some kind of sales. And I thought, okay, where can I sell? And I saw an ad for Infinity to sell cars. And I thought, well, it's not my ideal, but hey, it's sales and they're high end. So maybe I can do well. And I actually did do well the first 2 or 3 months. Nobody told me in the fourth quarter people don't buy luxury cars. I didn't do well the next 3 months because we hit the holidays. And I hated that business. It was very, very much me against you. I didn't like that kind of adversarial relationship. But what it did teach me while I was there was I was friends with the finance manager, and he would let me see the applications because I was just curious who's buying these really high-end cars and paying cash half the time. And so I saw everybody was either real estate, finance, or financial planning. Like it was all, those types of careers. And I thought, well, I bought a condo at that point, and I thought, he's got a pretty good gig. Like he came one day in a suit, the other day he was in shorts. I was like, I said that could be something I could get behind. And my college roommate, who had a psychology degree and was also making no money, I called him up and I said, I'm thinking about getting my real estate license. And he's like, no kidding. He's like, I was literally thinking the same thing. And so we went and got licensed, and he had a friend from Chicago whose dad built a house in the Pinnacle Peak Vistas in North Scottsdale. And he found an ad for an office across the street that offered a lot of training. And he said, I'm going to go start at this office because I know that area is kind of up and coming. And I didn't know any better. And I said, okay, cool, I'll go with you. And so I started with a really small Coldwell Banker franchise in North Scottsdale back in 97. And, I just got lucky. I really went into it to make money, not knowing if I would like it or not. And I struggled like everybody does in the beginning, but eventually I just ended up really loving it. And I've been in the North Scottsdale market ever since.
Yeah. Awesome. I know we have known each other, I don't know, what has it been, 10 years now? And
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, and I know we're at Remax together. And, it wasn't like the collaborative atmosphere, that we're used to now. But the biggest thing was like, with you, obviously you were very collaborative, and then also our mentor, Del Rounds. Like, when I joined Remax, I was, trying to struggle, growing a team, still doing great production. But with him, I was able to grow substantially. Of course, I've grown a ton more since. But tell me a little bit about, Del and like how, his mentorship helps your career.
Yeah, nobody shaped who I am as a real estate agent and just a human being probably more than Dell did. Literally the first interview I ever did at that Coldwell Banker office, he walked in the middle of it because he had a question for the broker. And he was a younger guy. I think I was 26 at the time. I think he was 31. And he came in and he was this kind of fit guy that just emanated energy. And he asked a quick question and left. And they're like, oh, by the way, that's our top producer, Del Rounds. And I thought, wow, that's impressive. He's a younger guy, because they had some older agents there that, I knew did a decent amount of production. So when I started, it was very hardcore cold calling, basically almost all the time, which was very foreign to me. But eventually I started getting some appointments, but I couldn't get anybody to sign with me. And so my broker finally said, hey, go take Dell with you on these appointments. He's like, because 50% of something beats 100% of nothing. And so that's how we became friends. I would start taking him on appointments, and then because we were both into fitness, we hit it off very quickly. And then he started saying, he would call me on a weekend and say, hey, I got this guy that wants to see this house at 2:00. I can't go. Can you go meet him, and then I'll just take a split? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And it just grew from there. I eventually joined his team, which I was very resistant to, because I was afraid I was going to lose my identity if I, was just one of Dell's people. And I'll never forget, he was always really, really good about that. Most team leaders are very ego driven. They want everything to say their name. They don't want any exposure. And he was like, hey, he's like, just join my team. He's like, if you want to do stuff on your own and you want to create your own resume, he's like, go for it. He's like, anytime you need my help, you use our resume. And like I said, I've never forgotten that. Even up until a couple years before his untimely passing, I had gone to him and said, I just feel like I need to grow. And he said, well, you know what? He's like, how do we let you start a team within my team? He's like, and that way you can start to earn some extra revenue. And I was like, well, that's awesome, because it's funny, because on one hand, I feel like it did limit me, because he made it so comfortable. I didn't want to leave, which was a great lesson, but it also held me back a lot, because I was that comfortable that I just didn't feel like I needed to go anywhere. So, but I still, so many things that the way I treat my people, he had no ego either. I'll never forget, he would high five his competitors if he lost. He didn't want to lose. He was a fierce competitor, but if he lost, he recognized that we had a lot of great agents we competed with, and he was not bitter about it. So, and I remember that too. It's okay to acknowledge that somebody else is really good, and not feel like that's a bad thing. So just a lot of little things like that. But he was also just a born leader. I mean, I compared him to Bill Clinton and Obama. When he got up in front of a room, he had the mannerisms, the facial expressions, his physical way of communicating was extremely effective. So much so that a lot of times, if you listen to what he said, it didn't necessarily make a lot of sense, but he would say it in a way that you would end up nodding your head and going, yeah, okay. I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, it really was just a tragedy, truly a legacy in this industry, and it really was a really sad moment for so many. So yeah, I mean, I loved, he was so charismatic. One of the most favorite things I never wanted to miss is when he did live cold calls every Tuesday. Oh, yeah. We got in there and hear it, and so I took his cold calls. I hate cold calls, so I hired an ISA. But I was able to grow my luxury business on Expire, and I've learned. I learned because I was really in it with him, and he was in it with the agents. You know what I mean? So.
He absolutely was. I mean, he told me, he's like, it's kind of funny. He's like, it's like they're watching me do push-ups. He's like, but there's no better way to learn than to hear somebody actually. I mean, that's how I learned a ton of my stuff, was going on those appointments with him and hearing in the real world the questions and how he would respond. And again, I learned a lot.
Yeah, no, totally. And he had a great team, there. And I know, so you were always super luxury, super hardworking. And then, in the last few years, obviously you're still selling a ton of lecture yourself, but I know like me, you've been able to be in this industry for so long, learn so much, but you are able to take a backstage now and let your agents win and truly like focusing on how do I lead and grow businesses, not just for myself, but for our agents. So I'd love to hear your take on, where your team is now. What have you enjoyed the most about it? And later we can discuss challenges. But I know I just went to your office and I was just the most beautiful real estate office I've ever been in. I know your agents
Well,
would love to be there.
yeah, I feel like, we compete with heavy brands. We Serhant, Berkshire, Sotheby's, Compass. You know, if you're going to be in that space, like, that clientele, they kind of have an expectation. That's why I came to Market Street here in DC Ranch. I feel like that's a premium address. And I just felt like we had grown enough that it was time for us not only to have our own space, but to have a really premium space, because I'm going to do this for at least another 10 years. So I'm like, I want to be somewhere. And I've never really felt like I've had a really nice office. I've always had okay offices. So, but as far as the team goes, I came over with, I think, 7 agents. I had a couple agents that did not want to leave Remax, which was fine. And, I came to EXP to learn how to be a team leader, because I watched Dell do it, but the more exposure I had to other teams really showed me that we were really inefficient on a lot of levels. And so that was one of the big reasons I came to EXP, is after going to a couple of their masterminds, it was so eye-opening to see the collaboration, how generous people were with sharing their playbook. This is how we do this, and not every, and it's interesting because not everybody does it the same way. Everybody does it a little bit differently, and so there's no right or wrong, and nobody was like, oh no, you need to do it this way. So it's hard in the beginning because it's information overload, and of course I'm the worst. I want to take it all and I want to do it all. So it took me a while to get the cadence of figuring out what to use, what not. But now it's been massive. I mean, I don't really actively recruit. I mean, at our highest, we had about 35 people. And there's nothing better than seeing some of these, especially some of my really young agents, be successful. I have a kid that came over, Paul came over from another team, and, nothing against Zillow, but his first question is like, he's like, just tell me you're not going to make me do Zillow Flex. And I said, good news. I don't have Zillow Flex. And he's like, thank God. And he's like, all I want to do is high end. I just want to do luxury. And I was like, that's fine. I said, just sit in my open houses. And he did like over 12 million last year. And the kid's 21. He can barely buy a drink. So he's going to just continue to do that. And seeing that, I joke that he's like my 5th child, because he calls me all the time, which I like. I try to tell my agents, like, look, don't be afraid to call me. I know I'm busy, but it doesn't mean I don't want to help. I mean, I really do want to help them, especially, if they're motivated and they're trying. People who aren't as motivated, it's a little harder to get, enthusiastic about. But I know Del, my old partner, he loved that mentoring aspect. And, I enjoy that when I feel like people are really trying. So that's been phenomenal. But it's just a learning process. Like, you never, I tell people this business is like golf. Like you will never, that's why when you see a pro and he shanks one, you're like, yep, happens to all of us. Nobody's perfect at it. You're always still trying to refine it, get better at it.
Yeah, no, totally. And I love how you mentioned there's no right or wrong way. I love Zillow Flex, obviously. We just sold a 21 million and a 12 million with the same client within 2 months of them coming in. Obviously, we have the $50,000 land leads too. But I would love to hear more about like what you have learned, like maybe one thing that in leadership that you've been able to learn from, being a team leader, and a really inspiring team leader at that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I impress upon my agents a lot, and I don't even know that I learned this as a team leader, but I've just told them that, the one lesson that I've really tried to stick with, and it's not easy, is just always taking the high road, because you have clients that want to fire you because they found something else without you. You have clients that, I just had a guy that wanted 2.6. I told him I thought 2.2 tops. We went 90 days with no showings. Then we had this flurry of activity, and we had one buyer that actually got to 2.55, and he just slept on it over the weekend and decided they just didn't even want to sell anymore. And at that, he decided I wasn't the right agent because I didn't call him enough. I wanted to like unload on this guy, and I just thought, you know what, this guy's a he's big in his church. I'm like, all that's going to happen is he's just going to badmouth me to everybody he knows. And so I told my team this. I said, so as hard as it was, I just thanked him for the opportunity and I sent him a cancellation and I moved on. Because I can't tell you how many times that I've done that with people and they've come back to me later just because I handled it the right way, the professional way. And so that's one of the things I impress upon them a lot. But I also tell them that, to me, the people who last in our business are the workers. It's not the most talented salespeople or the people who have the best tech knowledge. It's just the people with drive. I think that's why you and I probably just like connected. Like we just both have that, like, how do I make it better, bigger, faster, more efficient? It's a bit of there's some juice to it as you see it grow and you get better at things. And no different than selling a house. Like there's some satisfaction with taking an initial call, converting it into your client, seeing them through the process and closing it. So it's similar.
Yeah, and before the podcast we mentioned the word obsessed, right? And it's like, and we also mentioned like we cannot make somebody motivated, but the only thing we can do is provide the environment that can make them successful if they tap in. Yeah, 2024 was a very interesting year in the industry. We saw the most teams ever get disbanded or absorbed to other bigger teams. Obviously, you have risen to the top, Darwinism, and like you've been able to take over market share like crazy growing your team. And kind of want to ask you too, because I know you had mentioned, one of the things that you've learned the most. But when I got it to be a team leader, before I moved to EXP, I had 3 agents. My production was covering the loss of people. I realized I had to be in human resources. I had to be in financial. I had to be in operations. And it's like so many hats we've never been able to work before. So I'd like to hear, what were your challenges in growing the team and making it a profitable? You met that.
Well, that's easy. I feel like I'm still challenged with growing the team. Like one of the things right now is because after 2022, when the rates went up and everything slowed down, like I had at that time, I think 4 employees. So I was like, all right, this isn't working anymore. I'm not, making the money I was. So having to cut people was very difficult. That's not an easy thing. I think my first couple of people I fired, I had my wife do it just because she used to do that in her job. And then I felt really bad about that. I said, okay, I'm never having anybody fire anybody again except me. That's just bullshit. I need to be able to handle that. So there's been a lot of lessons, but even now, like Jenna, my assistant, has worn like every hat, which is great. I kind of wanted her to have that skill set, but she's still too bogged down with training, with questions from agents. So like right now, we're like, okay, we need this position, and that's one of the things we're doing tomorrow is we're going to sit down and really just try to define this position because it just constantly changes. Like we need help in different ways than we did even a year ago, but you almost have to be able to define it to be able to hire. So just learning that in and of itself is growing. And you and I had this conversation the other day about like hiring a very high end, because we have 5 VAs that work for us, but there's nobody that really holds them accountable. Like one of them kind of does, but he has a tendency to get adrift, but that's what you and I were talking about, hiring that next level, a virtual assistant that can be almost like an operations manager and then keep them in line. So to me, it's just this constant evolution of trying to do it better. And that's where it's just so great to have people like you, Lauren, Glutch, like people I can reach out to say, how did you handle this? But that's also the best part about EXP is we have so many high level teams that, with just fantastic people, because obviously, like when I was at Remax, I'm not going to name him, but there was one of their biggest producers when I was listing my most expensive, the highest end home I've ever sold. I reached out to him 3 different times just to pick his brain for 5 minutes, would not call me back. And I'll never forget that. I was just like, you know what, if this guy called me tomorrow, and you know what, I'm not that guy. If he asked me for help, I'd still probably give it to him, but I would let him know, hey, you know what, I tried you 3 times and you would not call me back. So to me, I've never seen that at EXP.
No, I mean, obviously there's the masterminds and trainings and all that, but the huge value is being able to have you on speed dial. Hey, look at this property. Hey, I need a agent. Oh, and I know when you reach out to me, I have 8 virtual assistants, and I don't think people truly understand how absolutely talented these people are. I know I had just hired a super high-end VA. Hired her on the spot last Monday. She's only been in the role 2 weeks. and I've never seen more progress. And in the environment we're in, like, it is very fiercely competitive, the most competitive in all-time history. And being able to scale and be profitable, we can't do it with like 10 American positions. Like those 9 people I pay $8,000 a month for, 9 times like 80, it's that. So yeah, kind of like tell me about like how you're identifying the leverage you need in like with humans.
Well, it's just like you said. I mean, I think that's what you have to be careful with because, your individual production is always going to be more profitable than being a team leader, so you have to run it in a way that's still profitable because, I'm still in production. I still make a lot of money on my own personal production. And, there's been times I've looked at Jenna and been like, does this even make sense? Like, should we just go back to being like a 4 or 5 person team? And, but we understand like where we were missing it and the tweaks we have to make. So, and like you said, my 5 VAs, they do the work of 5 people here, but at 1/5 the cost. And we're really looking now. We don't have a huge amount of extra time, but we're spending all of our extra time trying to figure out the secret sauce with AI. Like, can AI replace even some of our virtual assistants? Is there some of these things that we can automate and utilize that technology for that will replace? Because even if it frees up, maybe not to get rid of the VAs, maybe we just give them slightly higher level tasks that they can do that they're not in as much of the menial, reports and things like that we have them do. So to me, it's always trying to find those ways that you can keep it lean, so that it's no different than any other business, just trying to keep the profits, as high as you can without losing service or quality.
Yeah, and really interesting is in the luxury space, how many large teams do you actually see? Oh, and I know there's a couple like high-end, very, luxury brands, but I only know like solo agent producers there. How have you been able to grow this luxury brand and be, I don't know, the biggest luxury team in Arizona?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that just the more luxury I've done, the more people have approached me because they want to do luxury. Because I don't really do outreach as far as recruiting agents. I haven't had to. I've been really fortunate. And I think that it's funny, that's what reinforces me continuing to keep my production level up, is because I'm like, well, that's been my biggest recruiting tool, so I better keep listing high-end homes. But it also gives my agents open house opportunities, reinforces our name, and especially now that AI has become such a thing. Back in October, I just noticed all of a sudden I was getting all these calls that were direct, and every time I was asking, how'd you find me? It was ChatGPT, and I was like, wow. I'm like, all this stuff I've done for 15, 20 years, videos, blogging, it's finally all paying off. So that's been really amazing too. But it's also scary because it's been so good. I'm like, wow, I don't ever want to lose this, but I know every agent on the planet now is gunning for, to be in these results. And it's interesting because the people who call us, a lot of times they've made their decision by the time they pick up the phone, because these things spit a couple answers out and then people just take it like it's the gospel. So to me, that's really like our biggest focus right now is how do we, stay where we are, if not improve it. And for my team members, that's the other thing we're looking at with AI. How can I use the AI to help them achieve that for the areas? Because I try to get them all to commit to some kind of an area that they want to work. I tell them, don't be that guy that's just going to say, oh, I work all of Scottsdale. It's like, I think you're going to always do better, especially in the digital age, if you can specialize and be more niche oriented. So I've been trying to get them to go there. And then what we're trying to do is automate a lot of their marketing through AI. So it's just basically spoon fed to them on a daily basis. Here, go shoot this video and upload it here. And then if we can get the AI to start editing, posting, just a lot of that like stuff that just takes a lot of time so that they can just focus on the actual content and doing the things that truly will help them rank and make money.
So tell me more about ChatGPT. How are you? I see you too. I like when I'm like looking and like competitive, like you pop up, which I love, How did you be so successful at ChatGPT?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure, but I do have some clues. I know that it takes into account third-party credibility. I think because it's interesting, I'm not Zillow Flex, but I am on with almost every other lead provider. And I think their websites actually help with that because they push me up as a top agent. I've also had a pretty good PR from my $28 million sale. I was in the Wall Street Journal, I was in the LA Times, and I know PR plays a role in it. And then I think just longevity, consistency, reviews, there's a lot to it. And we certainly haven't hit on everything. So that's what we're trying to do now is it's like, okay, where have we missed it? Because obviously if we can continue to hit on those things and reinforce it, hopefully we'll at least stay in the same position we have as far as the number of searches we're coming up in. And I'm still not getting hit on all of the really high end searches. So that's something we're trying to focus on too. And the more we learn it, the more we're trying to help our agents do a similar type of strategy for whatever farm areas they're working.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Tell me about your top 3 lead sources right now. So what are those and how are you growing those channels?
So my top lead source right now is just the AI stuff. But really, as far as volume of leads, Referral Exchange is our biggest lead provider, then followed by HomeLight, and then the rest of the different providers, to me, I'd throw them all kind of in a bucket because they're not a massive amount. But I also try to tell people when I interview them, like, look, if you're looking for like a mass amount of leads, they should talk to you. Because that's just not, we're not a flex team. We're not going to be able to bombard them with leads. But, I do have great inventory and, you don't have to do as many deals when you're doing high end. And I explain to them, like, if you're sitting a $4 million listing, you're probably going to get a lot of $2 to $3 million buyers. I don't know why that is. It always seems like they go look at the stuff they can't quite afford. I said, and that's really been our goal is we really just want to create this team that really focuses on the Northeast Valley luxury. And that's really my goal. If I could get to 50 agents that are really very focused on Northeast Valley luxury, that all have a minimum level of production, it would hit all of my team goals, and I think everybody'd be pretty happy. So that's kind of our niche, and it's hard to do that with the lead providers. Most of the time you're not getting luxury leads from these. You're always going to get some. But it's rare you get stuff over 2 million anyway. So most of that stuff, it's a little more open house, face to face, and just being in the places where those people tend to transact.
Yeah, no, and we mentioned earlier there's no right or wrong way. Obviously, we have very different business models, but you've really drilled down on your unique selling proposition, right? So
yeah, I mean, we did a lot of EOS about a year ago, just really trying to figure out, okay, where do we want to go? What do we want to, because my team was pretty scattered. I inherited people from Dell's, previous team, and then I kind of just was adding people hodgepodge because I was like, as long as they seemed like a good person and they were motivated, that was my criteria. I was like, all right, come on board. It's only the last year we've really started saying, look, we're going to try to cut down on people who don't live in the area. I think it's very difficult when you're driving to our office, trying to work in this area and then going home, 30 minutes away. There's a lot of those things that we really refined. And we're also, I'm not firing people, but we're definitely trying to recognize much quicker the people who are not kind of buying in and doing what we ask them to do, and just asking them much quicker if they really want to be here, or if they don't, maybe your team or some, because I'm not a hand holder. I tell them up front, we're going to give you a program and ask you to follow it, but we're not going to stand over you and make you do it. And so the people that can pick it up and run with it, that they're going to do well. The ones that can't, we just suggest that they, and it's okay. Some people need more of that accountability, and that's just not us.
No, and you also mentioned earlier about listings and the $2.6 million listing, it's only worth 2.2. We've got to be willing to walk away from those listings, just like we need to walk away from those agents, right? I mean, I was seeing too, same thing with you, of really drawing back and getting rid of, the losers. So if they didn't at least produce 6 a year, then they were put on a performance improvement plan, and 30 days, if they can't raise their levels, they could pay me $300 a month to stay on my team. But you've identified, so tell me a little bit more about letting people go.
Yeah, I think that it's easy now because now we look at the numbers, and I have 32 bodies, but I have like so far this year I have 20 who've actually closed a deal. So then you start looking at the ones who haven't and saying, okay, like what is this person? I had one person that, and it's easy to get sucked in because I have these people that are maybe not going to be that active, but when they do a deal, they have a great sphere, and it's probably going to be a fairly large one. So it's like, okay, not really a drag on the company per se from a cost standpoint, but by the same token, like we get classified as a mega team because I have this number of agents. When really 90% of our production are 8 of us. And so I'm like, am I better to just cut some of those people, go into a smaller, group where we would essentially get awards and higher recognition? But it's also hard for me. If they're a really good person and I feel like they are going to contribute along the way, then I've been very lax about it. But people who just show up for the first 2 or 3 team meetings and then disappear for 90 days, and we just can't see that they're making any effort. It's like I said, you learn people who already have a job and are going to do this until they can get up to speed. You just start to like see patterns emerge where you're like, okay, yeah, we've seen this before. Very, very, and at least now I just say, look, if I really like them, I'm like, I'm going to consider you, but I'm just going to tell you right now, we just don't see a high success rate for people who are still working another job.
No, absolutely. There's no part-time agents. We do give them 90 days. I'm like, be a waitress or an Uber driver, because in 90 days you can't have a part-time job. And I know for me, I was like, got some Navy SEALs on my team, right? And then we like put them in the same room as these non-producers that show up once in a while. No, like they're gonna look around. It's embarrassing. I don't want to be embarrassed, right?
Exactly. Yeah, those people don't want to be that, and that's what I find. My people who come into my office every day tend to be my producers. The people who, oh no, I don't need an office. I can work from home. I have a couple of them that are still productive, but for the most part, they just don't tend to do deals.
Yeah. And so backing up just a few minutes ago, you talked about EOS. Now, there's a lot of agents listening to this right now that don't know what EOS is. So why don't you tell us what it is?
Yeah, I think it's entrepreneurial operations system is the technical term, but traction, the book Traction, it's just, they analyze all these businesses and they realize that most of them run a fairly similar way on this system. And so, and it's funny, I hired somebody and to take us through it. And I used to tell Jenna, I would come out of those sessions. I said, Jenna, I am exhausted. I've never had to think so hard in my life. He just kept asking questions. What about this? Well, why do you want to go there? And I was just like, oh my God, this is like, it's kind of painful, but it makes you realize very quickly, like, wow, we were just kind of like winging it like the whole time. Like, where do we want to go? Like, if you don't kind of have the destination, it's really hard to be efficient and set goals. And so anyway, it's like I said, it's kind of a painful process, but absolutely necessary, and it's really shaped almost all of our decisions. And we've gotten lax about it over the last 6 months, but we're going to spend a lot of time tomorrow, in fact, not only rounding out this position we need to hire, but really updating all of our rocks, which are your short-term goals. And I think our 3 and 5 year plan are still pretty good. I think we're still on track for those, but we've just gotten off track as far as our short-term, things that we're doing to try to get there. So it just gives your business a really good framework to operate within to make sure, I think they use the term making sure everybody's rowing the same direction in the boat.
No, totally. It's like we can have all the motivation and like the hard work that we have, but if we don't have that structure there's no way we can keep up with that. And Traction, for those of you that don't have the book, immediately get on Amazon, order it. It is the Bible. Instead of just being like a chicken with their head cut off, this is going to teach you how to run an actual business. And I just wanted to mention on my site, so there's Traction and then also Rocket Fuel. I love Rocket Fuel. It's shorter, but it's all about finding that one person, your integrator, the person that like takes all your crazy ideas and actually makes them happen. So since you've run your business on Traction, like really, like what are the top things that like you were able to identify as problems in your business?
Well, I think one of the things I mentioned earlier was just having these agents that were in like on the west side in like different parts of town where I'm like, man, the business is really hard. Like if I had to drive to Glendale every day and then try to operate in an area I wasn't as familiar with, where I had no sphere, it just seems so counterproductive. And it's hard because I still have an agent on my team that's from that area, and he's actually really good. And I've told him, I said, I think at some point, if you really want to get to where you want to go, you need to consider moving over here. I mean, I said that, or I said, I'm happy if you want to operate more in that area. I said, I'll keep you on the team because I just like you so much and you're a good addition. But, when we look at where we really want to take the team, how do you get synergy if you're not focused on one goal? So
Yeah.
to me, nothing's going to grow us quicker than having more Tackett team signs and sales in the same general area. Um, and to me, like once you start to do higher end, it spoils you. I mean, there's no question. Like to me, the deals are easier. I'm dealing with savvy people who know what they want. Most of them are extremely well qualified, high percentage cash, and they don't like lose their minds over little issues. So it's just a better business model, and I feel very comfortable there. And so it's changed the way I think on how I hire and what I tell the agents to do from a marketing standpoint. And I think all of our agents that are still with us are very comfortable with that. They all want to do high end. They all want to do it in the Northeast Valley. And so I feel like just that change alone has really helped us shape our direction.
That's absolutely spot on. Now, like time is our biggest asset. And I know with you, like you had to be very aware of your time as you grew the team. So what does a day look like for Darren Tackett?
It's funny. It just so every day. I shouldn't say every day. 6 days a week I work out. Whether it's I lift 4 days a week, and I walk now 2 days a week. I try to take Sundays off from any type of exercise and just give myself a day off. But I try to get that done early. I try to get here between 8 and 9. It just depends on the day. I take my stepdaughter to the bus stop. I have to drop her off 5 days a week at 6:45. So that limits me to a degree. I'd like to get up a little bit earlier and get done. But I like to be here no later than 9. And it just depends on the days. I have my team meetings. We do the production mastermind with EXP that sucks up 2 hours. Mondays are always the toughest because that's when all my agents are here and they all want to talk to me. That takes a good chunk of my day, but I do spend the rest of the day following up, doing some of my own production stuff. Tuesdays, I record videos to every one of my listings on Tuesday morning and send those out with a software called a Beacon Report, showing them all the activity. Every day is a little bit different, but like tomorrow we're going to spend a good chunk of the day defining this new position, working on our EOS, getting updated with all of our rocks and our goals. But it's pretty intense. I have some white space in my calendar where I try to leave open just so I have the opportunity to go. I've really tried to take more time for myself the last year. I have a good friend who invited me to a golf tournament that's Silverleaf. My club has been closed because they've been remodeling the course, so I haven't played in about 4 months. So I've just been hitting some balls lately because I'm like, I can't show up and look terrible with this. He's like nearly a scratch golfer, so I'm sure the other guys he invited are pretty good. So I have to at least be able to look like I can play. But that's just part of like North Scottsdale. Like if you can't play golf at all or don't have any ability, I think it hurts you a little bit in this market.
Yeah, absolutely. What about your team meetings? So you have one once a week. What is the structure of that team meeting?
It's pretty similar. I really just I try not to make it too long. We usually don't go much longer than 30 minutes. Once in a while I'll have like a speaker. I had one of the auction companies come in recently because, I'm friends with Frank Azami. He's not EXP, but he's been a very high-end agent for a long time, and he's utilized auction fairly effectively to sell some high-end homes. And he explained to me it's just a tool. If you have a seller who really has a short time period, it can be an effective tool to accelerate a sale. So I thought it was a good idea to have them come and talk and just, expose my agents to that just as an option. So if we don't have a speaker, I just try to give them, I read every morning. I didn't say that's part of my morning routine. For the first hour I get up, I have a cup of coffee and light breakfast, and I just read like world events, stuff in our industry, because I feel like the higher end clients, they're going to ask you about that stuff. What do you think about rates? What do you think about the Fed chair being replaced? Do you like Scott Bessent? What do you think this Iran thing is going to do to the market? And if you don't have, what do you think about this whole Remax being absorbed by Real? I try to go through that stuff with them on a weekly basis and discuss it. So at least they have some talking points if they're in an open house and these things get brought up. The same thing with just how is the market. I try to go over Cromford data a little bit each week. So again, just try to plant that in their head. So if they're at Starbucks and somebody strikes up a conversation, starts asking them, because everybody and their brother, as soon as you say you're in real estate, they ask you, how's the market? And, you just don't want to say the same generic crap that they all say on social media. If you have actual data that's fairly recent, you're just all immediately going to sound a step above almost any other agent they speak to. So, right now, I think Fountain Hills, for whatever reason, is like on fire. Queen Creek is not. Little tidbits like that. If you know it that well, I think you just sound much more impressive to people in general.
Yeah, and so agents listening to out of the country, I'm sorry you don't have the Cromford Report, but if you are in Phoenix, you don't know who Tina Tamboer is with the Cromford Report. We are the luckiest city in the whole nation, maybe the world, to have an economist that breaks down everything so easy. I look at it every day. I don't know about you guys, but every day I'm looking up. Two, you mentioned trends. There are so much big news right now in the industry. I mean, the whole Reel and Remax thing. So tell me how you stay on top of those. Is there specific websites that you go to? How are you getting in front of the news? As soon as it hits, you're going to be able to understand it.
Yeah, it's funny. Between just the national media, I actually go to MSN just because they aggregate from so many different places. And, I follow Tristan Amuhata with Lab Code Agents. I follow, what's his name? Jeremy Jared, I think is his name. Tom Ferry, just different industry people that don't always have the same perspective, but at least by the time you've heard two or three of them talk about it, it'll give you at least an idea of all the different thoughts that people have. I think that there's a lot of change happening. Well, I know that there's a massive amount of change happening in our industry. And so to me, you have to at least stay in touch with that because again, clients are going to ask you about it. How does this impact me? Well, what's your company? What do you have going on? So I remember back when EXP was flying high, and it's funny, a lot of my clients weren't familiar with EXP, but at the time they knew the stock was doing really well because they were savvy. So they would ask me, they'd be like, oh yeah, I've heard of you guys just because I've seen your stock. So, to me, you just have to stay up. Like the Cromford, like you talked about, I'm sure anybody in any market, you have to find a really reliable data partner, like Jen said, we're lucky we have a mathematician that puts all this stuff together, and for $35 a month, you have access. We can make almost any graph we need to tell the story. And I tell all my agents, anytime you can walk in with data like that, visual data, way better than just speaking about it. I mean, obviously, if you can speak well, it's effective. But when you can back it up with data, people can't argue with math. When you show them facts and data, because a lot of times you're going against the national media that's always trying to, use the United States as a whole, when the reality is, like I just said, we have submarkets because we have so many suburbs, and they may be doing great half through the year, and then the second half of the year they're not, and it changes that much. And so, that's what your sellers and even your buyers are looking for. Do you have that really micro data that is most relevant to what they're trying to do? So that's our job. So you just need to be up on it.
Yeah, no, they're seeing it all over social, all over the news. Maybe, 10 years ago, make it to its news, 90 days later. But so let's shift. Let's talk about being uncomfortable. Now, I know, you personally, you were very resistant to video. Fast Track today, and I see you all over the place. I know you are having so much organic attraction, both with buyers and sellers, but also agents. So tell me a little bit about being uncomfortable and what you've done to really dive deep on video.
So I laugh because I think I've deleted most of them, but if you saw my first couple of videos, they were so bad. And I'll never forget, I used to use Stephen Garner with Hub Media. He's a great guy, and he's a very talented videographer. And I'd be like, Steve, what do I say? And he'd be like, hi, I'm Darren Tackett. And literally, he had to give me the intro. I mean, that's how and I was very robotic. But I do remember I had a friend that worked with me, and she started doing these live video walkthroughs, almost Vanna White style. She's way ahead of the curve. but she just kept hammering me with like, Darren, that's where it's going. That's where it's going. And so I hated it because I hated seeing myself on camera. Especially when you suck, like, you can't hide it. It's obvious. But I just had that belief that as much as I didn't like it, I knew she was right. I was like, this is where it's going. So I just kind of had like that blind faith that like just start doing it and hopefully it will like work out. And so yeah, I just continued to do video and it's like anything, you practice it and you get better at it. And so I have no qualms about doing video. And I tell people like it's I know real estate, so it's not like it's that hard. I mean, I just like we're talking now. If we had a conversation on a different topic, I probably wouldn't be nearly as confident. It wouldn't just be rolling out like it is. But that's video now. I just know the market. I know the homes. I know the amenities. So it becomes much easier for me to just jump into a video and shoot it. Same thing with like social media. Like most of the times with my social, I'm either doing a content session like this where I'm being asked questions on topics that I know, or I'm being prompted with topics that I know about that I just, can conversationally speak to. But I think what it does is it allows you to convey who you are as an individual and as a person so that people can look at you and just size you up and say, okay, I like this guy or I don't like this guy or whatever, And I think that's the missing piece and why people, it's just a must. You just have to do it because I can imagine being a consumer and you go to like 5 different agent sites and they're all going to tell you they're a top producer and they probably all got good reviews. That's, I think, a lot of times the deciding factor is people now go to check you out. And if you seem like, you're a fit, then they want to actually reach out and talk to you. So it's, to me, I'm really thankful I did it. I don't know what it was. It was just that drive. Like, I just want to be successful. If this is what it takes, I don't care how bad it sucks. I'm just going to do it.
No. And two, it's about consistency, right? Like you didn't put a few videos up and expect like business to be flooding in, and some of your videos might get like 8 likes and some of them might get like 10,000 views. So, and I don't know who doesn't wince at hearing their own voice, but that's definitely me. So let's talk about your systems and processes. So if you can just recommend tech tools that agents would benefit from the most.
Yeah, not to beat it to death, but obviously CRM first and foremost. We use Follow Up Boss just because it's best in class, and we just did a revamp. We had Alana Key's company go in and update all of our automations. I felt like those were getting a little dated. So I felt like that was really helpful. One of the other tools we've been using recently that I can't recommend enough, like Jimmy Mackin created a tool called Beacon, and that's been a big weak point for me, was keeping in touch with my sellers regularly. But the Beacon reports now, what it does is it aggregates all of the portals. So Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com. They're even starting to integrate our luxury sites. And what it does is it sends a comprehensive report that shows them every week all of their views. It also now integrates with Aligned. It shows them they're showing feedback. And my VAs then also add our open houses and our open house feedback. So they're getting that report every week. It also has a Loom video of me every week. I record like a 60 to 90 second just update. Just say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you can tell from the views, we're getting great online traffic, we're not getting as many showings, this is what I think is happening and why. Do you want to consider a $25,000 price drop? I think that's probably the best move. And so that's been game changing. Since I've started utilizing that tool, I get almost no calls during the week. Almost all of my sellers look at it, they absorb it. Usually it's just a text, hey Darren, we saw the video, yeah, let's drop it. Or, no, we're comfortable, we don't need to sell right away, let's just stay. So that has been even though it takes me about an hour to do all the videos, this time savings, because I do those, has been massive. And I feel like my customer service is better because they never feel like they don't know what's going on. So I'd say those two things. I'm trying to think of a third.
What about your sphere?
To
grow your sphere within
that. It's funny. That's my best sphere tool is low tech. It's my letter of the heart. I learned that when we were in the Corps. I send that letter out every month, and it never ceases to amaze me how many of my past clients read it religiously. Like I have a thing that pops up on my calendar every month on the 1st. It says write LOTH, and I sit down and write it. I include about 5 or 6 family photos, and I rarely talk about business. It's purely just about me and my family. I have the same format. I just give an update every month on what we did that month. Like we went to Disney last month and took the girls. So three of the photos I had were of us at Disney. My VAs actually made it a Disney theme for the whole like I say they bedazzle it. And I had a client call me the other day with a referral, and she's like, oh, I just got done reading your letter, and it's like I said, very low tech, but I mail that out every month, and to all my SOI, I think I have like 400 or so on the list, and it's by far my best client retention tool.
No, I love it. And we stole it from the same mastermind. And then the video update. Wasn't that like revolutionary? I mean, I was doing Tuesday update calls like a few hours, right? Like it just got so much resistance. And like what you do in 60 seconds would take a 30-minute phone call. So,
well, and that's the thing. People just want to talk, and I love them. If I had that kind of time, I would have no issues having the conversation. But it invariably, like you say, it ends up being 15 to 20 minutes minimum with every seller. Whereas this, and if they call me, obviously I take the call and we talk through it. And I almost always say that, I'm around. If you want to talk about it, call me. But it's like I said, it's just been really just a great tool. Shannon Gillette is the first person who kind of told me about it when it was in beta, and I was able to get in on the beta too, and it's still evolving. I think they're just going to keep making it better, so it's been good.
Awesome. Obviously, as your leader, you're growing your team. I would love to hear a story of like how your team has helped grow your agent's business and like have a better life at that.
Yeah, I think that Paul is still a great example of that. He's probably benefited the most from just specifically my mentorship and luxury. One of his first big listings he got was like $1.8 million listing down across the street on the Scottsdale Roads, East Scottsdale Road side of Paradise Valley. And that guy was tough. I remember he called me and he said, hey, I'm going to interview with this guy. Can you meet me at 7:30 p.m. at, I can't remember the name of the restaurant on Scottsdale Road. This was like, I'm like sitting at home. I just changed clothes. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to go eat dinner with some stranger. But I'm like, whatever, like that's my role. We went and had dinner, nice guy. But I think that literally helped him secure that listing. He ended up selling it. That guy did not list his next house with him, but he ended up relisting that one because he decided not to move into it. And now he's probably going to end up getting the other listing because those agents have not been able to sell it. But I've helped him at every step of that process as far as, hey, Don, call me. This is what he's asking me. What do I say? Or hey, should I do this from a marketing standpoint? So that was his first, I think, real luxury deal he did mostly on his own. But since then, he's done 2 or 3 more similar deals. And I went on an appointment with him recently, but he needs me less and less. And that's the idea, is he's going to continue learning. He's going to need me less at every stage, and that's what I tell all of our agents. That's why you have crappy splits in the beginning, as you're taking up a lot of my time. But as you get better and better, you won't need as much of my time, and I don't need as much of your money. So that's the whole concept.
No, and I know you have helped blown up new agents, but also you've had agents with such longevity, right? So successful in their own rights. So tell me a little bit, how have you been able to retain and keep inspiring your experienced agents that are already successful?
I think that it's on a bunch of different levels. I think that they know that I'm extremely responsive, whether I'm on vacation, wherever I'm at. If they text me and they need me for 5 minutes on the phone, they're going to get me. And I think that I provide what most designated brokers can't. Most DBs are not in the real world. They are handling, calls, but they are not in the trenches. And, you get to some of these high leverage situations, and I think that they're looking for the answer, not the DB answer. They're looking for the real world answer. Like, how do I handle this scenario? And so I think that's really what I provide for them for the most part, is that ability to get me on the phone quickly and help them solve a situation that maybe the broker's going to always give you the what covers EXP answer. And I'm going to give them how do you actually get to the finish line answer. It's just 2 different mentalities. And really, nothing against our brokers, because I think they're the best I've ever come across. They really probably don't have the solution a lot of times that I'm going to give them. So, between that, and then I think that they know that I'm always trying to be on the cutting edge, as far as technology, software, anything that can help us sell more. And that's also why I've always been very hesitant to stop producing, is because I feel like if you completely give up production, it is hard to stay as relevant with what's going on and what, like all this AI stuff. Like, I wish I had had another 2 hours a day because I would be spending it all on trying to figure it out. I mean, I'm purposely carving time out of my day right now just to try to keep up with it. Guys like Joe Turco in our sphere, and Kirby Chan, I've been pouring into them, trying to get more knowledge. So it's, to me, I think that's what it is. It's just a little bit of, I provide some leadership, I provide some expertise, and I definitely provide direction for them. Like, here's where I think you should be taking your business now. Because they ask me that a lot. How do I get to the next level? And because I've been there, I can help them much more so than somebody who doesn't have that same experience.
Absolutely. It's not theoretical. It's like, I'm in the trenches. This is what's working. So
Right.
Let's shift away from the light times. Let's talk about a dark time. What would you say is your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
I actually consider one of my biggest failures is staying comfortable for so long and not looking outside of our team for growth. Because I feel like I could have got to this level a long time ago if I had not been as comfortable. And again, kudos to Dell. He did a fantastic job of that. He made me feel very comfortable. And I think it was after like the third or fourth year in a row, I'll never forget it, I was Platinum Club with Remax. And people are like, well, are you going to go pick up your award? And I'm like, I don't want another one. I'm like, it's really more insulting than anything else to me that I've just stayed at the same level for so long. I said, it's like, what do I have to do to break through? And it wasn't until I started going to those masterminds and being exposed. And I kicked myself for just being too proud of what we had accomplished as a team and thinking that was really, that we were so great. I think back and think, man, we could have done so much more volume if we had gone out and sought out that information. But that is one, I think, thing that Dell didn't see clearly, is he just felt like his way worked. Why would he go reach out to competitors when what he did worked really well? And that to me was my biggest failure. And once I started to see it, that's when I started to tell him, hey, look, I think we can do this or that. He just wasn't a big believer in tech. He was much more of a, this sales happen belly to belly. That's what it needs to be. There's only so much you can do with tech, and some of it he's right on. But no, that was probably, and it wasn't a dark time. That you and I went through the dark time. The downturn was probably the hardest thing that we'd ever experienced. That's when our income got cut in half and transactions got super slow. I remember Dell talking about disbanding the team just because the overhead didn't make sense anymore for him. And luckily we ended up landing a Fannie Mae account. That's what kind of saved us back then. I'd take 8 checks to the bank and it'd total $3,000, but at least I had 8 checks, and that was a tough transition. But once we got past that initial phase, once people started buying homes again because the prices had dropped so much, it got a lot easier. But that's probably the deepest, darkest time we've ever had, just because I was nervous about getting through that. I had to short sell my house. I lost $750,000 on that house. It wasn't pretty, but it made me a much better. It humbled me. I know going into that, we were all pretty high on ourselves, and didn't think that could happen. So it definitely changed who I am. I'm much more conservative financially. I save a lot of money now. It was good for me in the end.
Yeah, I know 2020, everyone thought they were the best agent ever. And then 2022 hit, and it's an awakening. I loved how you talk about, when I ask about your biggest failure, you're not talking about, strategy and here's some tools. You talk about mindset. And we underestimate the value of mindset, right? It's we want to know, what's the next tech tool? I'm like, no. And you talk about staying comfortable, because good is the enemy of great, right? So if you're an agent listening right now, if you feel uncomfortable and you're thinking of something, that's great. Okay, so let's talk about your goals this year. What are you gonna do?
It's funny. I tell people, they're always asking me how many units, how much volume. I'm like, honestly, all I care about is my income. I really have always lived on that premise. I want to make over $2 million this year, and I want to take all of July off, which I did last year for the first time. I did come back once for a couple of appointments, and I may do that again this year. But that was the most time I've ever taken off in my life. My family and I had a fantastic time, so we rented the same place in Newport Beach. I'm trying to not necessarily grow the team in bodies. I'm trying to grow the team and quality and with our goals in mind. So I'm not taking on newbies anymore. I've learned the hard way we don't have the bandwidth for brand new people. I've just been refining a lot of things, but no, we want to add a similar high level virtual assistant to what you just did. And I think once we get those things in place, that's probably enough for this year. And then we'll recalibrate at the end of this year and hopefully look at taking the next step.
No, best year ever every year that goes by. And so you talk about balance. I mean, you have 5 to 26. I have between 11 and 29. And, it's like I was realizing the biggest regret I'll ever have in my life is that I didn't spend enough time with my kids. But now, since we've been able to mastermind and stuff, we have so much more balance, I was realizing I was spending more time at work than with my kids. So you've been really able to integrate more balance as you've grown.
Yes, that has been my biggest issue throughout my career. And yes, I regret that with my two sons because I did go to every sporting thing they ever did, but outside of that, I was not as available as I should have been. I was extremely bent on being successful in the business and just always making sure that I was doing business first and foremost. I was able to implement even some changes recently. I used to have almost every call routed to my phone. That used to literally drive me crazy. I implemented a answering service that has been life-changing. Just not having that constant buzz on my phone has literally brought my anxiety down a massive amount. And it's been great because it's been filtering out so many of just the useless phone calls that we would get. But it's also been fantastic because I think we were just not answering calls because we were so desensitized to it that we were missing business. So yeah, I'm much more comfortable taking time during the day, going and practicing golf, doing different things. Jenna helps me leverage a lot. The VAs have helped me leverage a lot. And that's, I think, what you're trying to do is, how can I keep production at a high level while maximizing the ability to take time? And, I took my stepdaughter and my 5-year-old daughter to Disney last weekend for 4 days. And, my wife is like, are you going to be on your phone the whole time? And I'm like, no. I said, this answering service, I said, you've seen it. It's way, way less. And sure enough, I barely did any business or needed to while I was there. A couple phone calls from team members. But, it's been fantastic. And it's revived me because, I was really pushing hard to get to a phase where I could consider retiring. But I feel like now I have as much energy as I had 10 or 20 years ago. So I really don't even think about retirement much anymore. To me, once you can find that, and I'll never forget when Dan Beers said, balance is bullshit. None of us have. That was the biggest relief ever. So it's not just me. Thank God, Dan, I love you. And to a degree, I still think that's the case. None of us truly have it, but we're all trying to. And I spend a lot more time with my daughter than I did my boys, which is, and I've told them over and over again, sorry guys, and they laugh. They're like, Dad, you're fine. But, it means a lot to me.
Yeah, and so it was Lex reception, right, of your answering service?
Lex, yep, literally. It's on my phone right now. They just took a message. So my phone didn't ring. It's beautiful.
Yeah. No, I love the fact that my phone only rings with VIPs. But you're so smart. Happy wife, happy life, right?
Oh, yeah. Especially my wife. You've met her.
I love your wife. So, yeah. Okay. So, thank you, Darren. You have been so awesome. I know agents listening to this are taking some away. But where can we find you?
TackettTeam.com. 3 T's in the middle. That's the easiest.
Instagram?
Yeah. If you Google me, you'll certainly find me.
All right. Yeah. And you're not just growing your team, you're growing your organization across the United States right now, because so many agents just follow your business model and want to know, how do I grow a team with luxury? So if you're an agent, no matter what 50 states you're interested in luxury, hook up with Darren.
Yeah, reach out. Love to talk about it.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Darren. Bye, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.
See you.